Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Smoke by Aja. Narrated by Winston James and Mari. Where there's smoke, there's fire, and ain't no water putting that shit out, motherfucker. Elijah Smoke Lewis. Elijah.
Please, please, I promise you I don't know nothing about those niggas that made that move, maestro.
Then tell me who knows what I want to know then, since you don't know. More sniveling. I thought so. Since you don't know, I'ma keep working until you pull some shit out your ass that might be the answers I need. I heard a few scuffles and what was probably punches to the body. The sound of the drill Eli was using commenced. Screaming.
Okay.
I smiled and I pressed the volume up on the control to my stereo to drown out the screams coming from a room about 300 feet away, deeper into the warehouse. But it wasn't my music coming out the speakers. Eli's music started bumping. I looked at the console. DMX's Get At Me, Dog. I was about to turn the shit off because I was more a Curtis Mayfield or Isley Brothers type of guy, until I heard the gruff voice of DMX ask, "What must I go through to show you shit is real?" I felt that shit because these motherfuckers kept testing us. We've been real clear about no narcotic distribution happening in any of our businesses, and yet every few months, some dumb niggas thought we were playing. So I let the song play because it was appropriate for the mood. I loved a good soundtrack. I checked a few texts from a couple women I would see for sex whenever I felt bothered enough. Claudette was the one working the hardest, and that made me try to remember whether she felt good enough to give her some more. But nah, no matter what tricks I pulled, her body didn't get wet enough for the fun to last. I read the others, and I just wasn't feeling it tonight. So I left them on red, then reviewed the emails that came through from Darian, my accountant. According to Darian, who did a great job cleaning our money and keeping our practices discreet, my spending was actually trending down, which was always good. I connected it to me being less bothered with pussy. Pussy was money. Even at my age, I knew that. And while I didn't mind throwing cash at ass, it got old quick. Paying bills for women that lacked enough ambition to get their own was unattractive. And the women who claimed they had it but felt entitled to be treated like they were your woman just because you had it made me side-eye them. Even so, I've tricked a lot because I could, but that shit was temporary. I pay to play and have good times, but it was like wanting to gamble and waste some money. It was a hobby, not a lifestyle for me. When the song ended, the silence allowed me to see Maestro was done putting in that work, and I wondered what he uncovered. Butch's heavy footsteps crunched against the gritty warehouse floor. I looked up just as he stepped through the doorway. "It's done?"
"It's done, boss."
"Good. Where's Eli?"
"He's calling Nadine to stop through."
"She always does the best cleanup."
"No lie. She got a lot of shit to clean up, too. This one didn't want to talk."
"They never do, but Eli knows how to change a motherfucker's mind."
"We don't call him Maestro for nothing."
I smiled at that. My son Eli was always a master negotiator, diplomat, and manipulator, so much so that he earned the name Maestro. My daughter Sarai, on the other hand, was the sly one. Most people never saw her coming, and she earned the name Slick. For Eli and myself, Sarai wasn't slick at all. We always saw through her shit, and even if we didn't, the trouble she caused was bound to catch up with her, and I'd have to fix it. My children's names suited them, the way mine suited me when I earned it. They would say where there's smoke, there was fire, because the only time motherfuckers got my attention is when I was done playing with them and was ready to end whatever bullshit they were on. The truth was, both Maestro and Slick got their shit from me, but I wasn't going to be the one to tell them that. Before I could ask him whether Slick had been by today, the monitor that sat on my desk showed movement. When I inspected it to see what was up, Butch moved in closer, almost leaning over me to see who would be coming by this late at night. Nadine knew to pull up out back in the loading area where no one would grow curious as to why the coroner was coming to the meatpacking district.
"Who is that, boss?"
Butch sounded like the work he'd done less than an hour ago only teased his appetite for shedding blood, and whoever this was would be the main entree. But when I saw the dark figure move into a sliver of light from a nearby streetlight and her honey-brown locks sway with her steps, I nearly gasped. Couldn't be. Zora promised never to darken my doorstep for as long as she lived, unless the girls needed the type of help that only I could provide. The realization that that might be why she was here made me stand up and pace.
"You all right, boss?"
I wasn't, but I lied because it wouldn't do any good to show how shook I was to see Zora. "Yeah, you can let her in."
"Oh, man, I was hoping she was Little Red Riding Hood and I got to be the big bad wolf."
Chuckling, I told him, "Nah, she's good people. Let her in." I sat back down and took several breaths as my mind raced with the possibilities. Was it Xena that was in trouble? Or Zola? I'd kill a motherfucker if either of them was hurt, that was for sure. Butch wouldn't get a chance to be the bad wolf because I'd be it. On the monitor, I watched as Zora's steps slowed and she looked up. Butch stood like a giant over her. I could only imagine her fear. If Butch wasn't my own guy, I might want to piss my pants if I came up on him in a dark alley too. Let's be honest. But I watched as Zora squared her shoulders and said something to Butch. A few moments later, he led her into the building, so I positioned myself behind my desk to look cool. I heard the sound of heels crunching against the floor, followed by Butch's heavy ones, before hearing him tell her,
"Go on."
Zora walked in with the proud carriage that made me fall in love with her over 40 years ago. Her smooth walnut-brown skin was wrinkle-free, save a few crinkles in the corners of her big brown eyes that appeared when she gave me a genuine smile. That threw me off, because if she was smiling, the girls were likely okay. My eyes did an immediate assessment of the rest of her, and even covered by her long dress and wool coat cinched at her trim waist, I could tell she was still in fantastic shape. I rushed to get this over with before my dick got hard, and I started to beg for her to forgive all the bullshit from 35 years ago and to take me back. When I saw your face on the monitor, I thought my eyes were surely deceiving me. But here you are, Zora, mother of my first 2 born children.
"I smoke."
Her smile was gone, and in place of it, a serene expression. I would take the long way through this conversation, but given it's been, 30 years? I'd say we can skip all that shit and get right down to why you're here. No offense.
"Since when did you care about offending me?"
Call me a changed man, because today I care. I watched as she nodded slowly with understanding.
"Well, I don't have much time to stay here chatting either. I need to go see about my new great-grandchild," she went on to say. My heart lurched. I never saw my children. I hadn't seen them since they were too small to remember the hide-and-seek games we played. So, of course, I'd never seen their children and grandchildren. But I was aware that Zoe had given birth to a baby boy. "So I'll make this quick. Both of our time is valuable, and yours is limited." What the fuck did that mean? I leaned forward and wondered if the decades-long peace I imagined Zora and I had was only that, an imagination, and she was here to threaten me. "Excuse me?" "You heard me, Elijah. Your life is in danger, and for the sake of the future of our daughters, their children, and their grandchildren, I'm going to help you."
Elijah. She had spoken calmly, not one bit of anger from years past. Deservingly, yes, but none of it seeped into her words. She was serious. "You don't believe me? After everything you've seen me do with my gifts, you don't believe me?" She looked at me with such disgust, I had to hold back my laughter. Zora could go from peace to war in a breath. "Zora, I know you can see things, yeah, but you know I've been at this a long time.
Not much can or ever gets by me. Your arrogance will be your downfall. All that I am God mentality has you forgetting that by that standard, there are others just like you, using methods you wouldn't dare. That quieted me. My chair creaked as I sat back in it. She looked down at my finger tapping on the table. It was my only nervous habit that I kept hidden. But what was the point of hiding what the psychic could see through? She saw it all anyway. Back when I was sleeping around, she sensed all the women, could tell me their different personalities and gifts and their flaws and why none of them would be good for me. My arrogance, as she correctly put it, had me taunting her. And you think you're better for me? She had just put Zola down to sleep and was tying up her beautiful hair. Her skin looked soft and glowing, and even despite the venom I was ready to shoot, I was drawn to her. She was warmth and love. There was never any denying that, but men like me didn't know how to handle women like her. We broke good things because good things came fragile. They only grew hard from hurt, and here I was wanting to fuck her while pulling off sex-scented clothes. Tears in her eyes, she stood erect and shook her head. No, I'm apparently not better for you, but I could have been. I was tired of her shit that day. She had nagged me before I left out to see Felicia, the chocolate honey with the fat ass and bad attitude. Felicia just wanted to have fun and get fucked. Well, that's what she said anyway, but whenever I went over there, she wanted to cook for me and lay up under me long after I made her come. But the pussy wasn't good enough for that, and neither was the smell of her food. Either way, I planned to go over there because seeing women when I was bored is what I did. But Zora kept asking me for some attention and affection. She wanted me to spend time with her that day. Zena was over her mother's house, but Zola was too small for her to want to be away from her for any length of time because she was breastfeeding. What the fuck is that supposed to mean? Don't raise your voice at me, Elijah. Or what? Her big brown eyes closed shut, and those unshed tears now ran down her beautiful cheeks. Her head shook again, this time with something I'd never seen before. Not sadness, that was way too simple. It wasn't even regret. No, it was defeat. She'd given up. For a small moment, I felt something I'd been cutting off. I felt empathy. I felt love for her, and I felt regret, because I knew that whatever her pure heart had been holding on to for the sake of us was now gone. I wanted to apologize and pull her in my arms and change my ways then and there. Felicia wouldn't have been worth me losing Zora. Not Karina, Prissy, nor Donna either. None of them compared. But I didn't go to her and comfort her because just as fast as the emotion seeped out, I locked it back away. Love didn't belong in the hearts of gangsters. Nothing. I won't do a damn thing. That's what she finally whispered before disappearing back into our bedroom that I rarely shared with her anymore. I did too much running to wake her and the baby up. The crazy thing was, I wasn't even sure why I was mad at her. A woman, a good woman at that, wanting you to be with her, should have been what mattered more. But from the moment I met Zora, I felt the weight of huge responsibility, like I had to take everything seriously or else my life would fall apart. It wasn't anything she said or did. It was just something about her that demanded the best. The problem with that is I was far from being the best at loving a woman. Pushing that weight, taking over corners, coming up with a hustle, I was great at that. Being king to a goddess was another matter. Who the fuck could ever be what she needed when what she needed seemed inhuman? Zora could visit the stars if she wanted to. She could probably create a baby without sperm. She was always able to see the holes in whatever plan I was coming up with, and while I pretended not to listen, I ultimately did, and she would be right. That was empowering because she was mine, but scary because she was mine. I was supposed to be the leader and be in control, and here she was again, reminding me I wasn't in control. Okay, I'm listening. All I know is that something dark is coming, but you have to go into the corners of your house to find it before it sneaks up on you. Huh? That's what I know. It'll choke you if you don't. I had no idea what she was talking about, but I nodded anyway. So the girls are okay? Yeah. So what made you want to help me out? I told you. It'll come down on them all if I don't. We stared at each other, and I wondered if she still loved me, and then shook my head at that thought. I knew she had married some nigga named Solomon. He wasn't me, but I was good with that because he wouldn't cross paths with me either. I have to get going. My husband is waiting for me. I stood, and just when I was going to reach for her hand to thank her, she waved and hurried out my office, leaving the sweet scent of musk behind. A moment later, my son walked in. Was that who I thought it was? I nodded instead of saying, yeah, the woman that should have been your mother. What did she want? She had a message to deliver. I quickly shifted the conversation to avoid discussing Zora's foreboding visit. Now tell me what you learned from that rat motherfucker before you popped him. Elijah. 3 months later. One dead in what appears to be another drug overdose tonight in downtown's popular club Passion's Gentleman's Lounge. Another person was pronounced dead an hour earlier at the Uptown, the popular upscale downtown restaurant that often serviced some of the city's elite. These deaths will count as the 25th and 26th deaths by overdose in the city since the start of the new year, and we are just 2 weeks in. A public official speaking on a condition of anonymity says they are in the process of narrowing down the organization responsible for placing citizens in harm's way with fentanyl-laced heroin and marijuana, often used by young people seeking to have a good time and not end up in the city's morgue. The official stopped short of saying when they plan to take the suspects down and end the tragic deaths that have reached into the heart of the city of Pittsburgh. But I'm sure we all can agree that this city needs it to happen fast. Rebecca Williams reporting from WVCA Channel 11 News. Fuck. I pressed the power button on the remote so hard the shit caved in and tossed it across the bed. It plopped against the black down comforter on my California king bed. The thud in the quiet room reminded me of how I was alone and couldn't put this frustration into some wet pussy. I reached up and scrubbed a hand down my face to shift my thoughts from going to a familiar place when I was reminded of having no consistent woman or pussy. It wasn't sadness or no shit like that came over me. Nah, it was just reflection on why I was alone. But again, I forced my mind back to the bullshit going down, and how I really didn't know what was going down, but I needed to find out fast. Certain things weren't good for business. Overdoses were bad for people in the drug game, that's for sure. But that wasn't my business. Not anymore, and not for a long time. But the businesses I had my hand in, they often serviced customers willing to go to the edges of the earth to find them a hit or people looking for a good time. We tried to manage that, but I don't give a fuck what the media would have you believe. Drug doers were everybody and anybody. They looked like you and me. And most of them had been scoring for so long that no one could detect how they got it, where they got it from, and when they took it. This was the third overdose at one of my business locations. Earlier this month, it was at Dino's, a bar and lounge that also had a private gambling situation in the back. Only heavy hitters could join the table, and only heavy hitters could owe the house. That one had flown under the radar of authorities because Slick had been around that night, collecting money with her guys, Tony and Reach, so she was able to hurry and get the young man out of the bar and into a vehicle to be dropped off at the hospital while she escorted the private party out the back into their cars. She made sure one of her trusted people stayed around the hospital to handle any questions surrounding what had happened to the college student. The second incident, however, took place when neither me, Maestro, or Slick could supervise the situation. It happened at one of our restaurants downtown. The Uptown wasn't like any of the other restaurants I fronted, mainly because it had management that wasn't exactly in-house. I provided my blessing, but Beast, the owner, was in charge of the day-to-day and didn't like oversight. Until this incident, there weren't concerns about our arrangement because he knew how to get people in the door, which allowed my reasonable cut of profits to flow consistently.
But that was also the challenge now, because the uptown brought in a certain clientele that wouldn't just turn their heads when one of the patrons started seizing and foaming at the mouth. No. These people would cry into their pasty palms and demand someone deal with the drugs in the city before they sought out money for the pain and suffering they endured, witnessing something that little black boys and girls witnessed on the regular with no recompense. Yet those same little boys and girls were expected to look beyond the crime happening in their neighborhood, on their blocks, in front of their houses, and become something different. Be great and choose a life of positivity when negativity was all they were fed. That was bullshit. I became smoke for the very same reason they were becoming what they were becoming. To survive in a place that chewed you up and spit you out. I became smoke so that I could change the story. Tonight's overdose would now make what appeared to be far from proof of a connection the greatest game of connect the dots. ODs happened every day, but not in my establishments. So either more careless motherfuckers were seeing my spots, or something out on the streets was shitty. Either one had to be stopped. I needed to get with Eli. I looked at the clock, 11:15. Knowing Maestro, he was either balls deep in some woman or, well, there was no or. Maestro kept a woman. The apple didn't fall far from the tree. Just as I was about to grab my cell to dial him, it vibrated against the nightstand. It was him. I grabbed the phone, swiped the green check, and spoke. You saw that shit? Yeah, Pops. KD called me. Wait, hold on. I could hear something shuffling and then him speaking away from the phone. Get your ass back in the bed. When I come back, I want your fine ass here waiting for me just like this. Then I heard what sounded like a smack, probably to an ass, before his voice was back in my ear. I shook my head. I'm going to shower real quick, Pops, and head to the club. No, you let me handle this one. I wasn't doing anything, and who knows how many nights you'll need to be away from the honey in your bed once we start digging into this bullshit. I could hear him thinking. You sure? Yeah, I am. I need something to do anyway. Pops, one of these days you're gonna have to let me handle these things. You don't need to run point. I know what I don't need to do, and right now, that's sit still. I looked down at the empty bed again and thought about how Zora was no longer pining away from me. She had moved on and seemed happier than I could ever make her. I swallowed hard. I'll talk to you in the morning. I hung up before he could say anything else. What I said to Eli wasn't a lie. I had nothing to do, and this would keep me busy. What I didn't tell him was how I had been haunted by Zora's visit, and rather than stay holed up somewhere trying to stay safe, I wanted to uncover everything I had been missing from starting to relax and let my children do more. Not only that, Zora reminded me of all the what-ifs that I often stayed away from listing. I don't know a man alive that ain't fucked up what he had with a good woman. Maybe it's our egos, our arrogance, our need to conquer whatever it is we want, and we want a lot. A lot of women, a lot of money, maybe even power. We see so much that seems unattainable without letting some things go, and that'll have us toying around with shit that's solid, like having a good woman. Over 30 years ago, I fumbled up the best and brightest woman I had ever encountered. This wasn't no romance novel where I'd fall on my knees to repent, and after some careful consideration, she decided to give me a second chance. Wasn't no way I would have been able to make it back into Zora's good graces. It's a miracle I even got close enough to call myself her man to begin with, and then to procreate with her and end up with the biggest blessings my foolish heart could ever conceive at the time. Xena and Zola were my daughters with Zora. They were the type of women you bragged about having, but I couldn't do that. I had no role in them being the bright stars they were. Like I said, I had fucked up immensely. I spent a good amount of time in the 80s swallowing my pride, but doing nothing about it. It hurt to watch in the peripheral, seeing them grow up, seeing Zora come to life bit by bit, and finally watching them grow away from the thought of me. Money, power, and a lot of beautiful women kept me company, though. When I was dealing with Zora, I had plans on living a different life than the one that sat before me. My mama struggled to feed my 5 siblings and me. My dad was a no-good piece of shit that left her holding all the responsibilities. And since I was the eldest and a boy turning into a man, it was left to me to handle what needed to be handled. She didn't ask how it was that at the age of 13 I could drop $50, $60 on the kitchen table to supplement the change she had left over after making sure we had a roof over our head and we stayed warm at night in the winter. She turned away from what was clear. I was hustling. She had to turn away because we couldn't live on pride and prayers. I took care of as much as I could, but that meant me not being around for my 2 sisters and 2 brothers. They looked up to me anyway because I bought Jeremiah and Isaiah new kicks so they wouldn't get teased, and I paid for Cassandra and Patty to get their hair straightened and curled. That helped out Mama in another way, too. She could rest and not worry about doing their heads on Saturday afternoons. But these days they turned their noses up at me until they were in financial trouble and needed help for them or their children. Even Patty, who was married with a good-paying job, was broke as a joke all the time from trying to look like she had it. Vacations, clothes, cars, all that shit paid with credit caught up to her and her husband Robbie's ass. The only one that talked to me without asking for something was Cassandra. She was my fly sister and the non-judgmental one. Anyway, I needed to put some clothes on, but first call Butch. After getting in touch with Butch and getting dressed, I headed out of my penthouse to the elevator. When I got down to the lobby, Butch was already standing there waiting at the check-in desk, talking to my doorman, who gave me a big smile. "Mr. Lewis, I was just telling Butchie he needed to leave you alone. You should be resting for the night." "I'm not an old man, Chico," even though I fucking was. "Oh, no, Mr. Lewis, I wasn't saying that at all." His face turned beet red, and he seemed embarrassed. I looked at Butch, who was surprisingly holding back laughter. "Relax, Chico. I know what you mean. You mean I'm old, motherfucker." "Oh, good, Mr. Lewis. I'm glad you understand." I had nothing more to say, so I looked off into the distance at the door, which he was supposed to be helping me with instead of leaning against the counter chatting. "Oh, let me see you out, Mr. Lewis." Chico, all 5 foot inches of him, scurried to the door to help me and Butch out. "You love fucking with him, boss." Butch chuckled as he helped me into the car. "Hell yeah. He needs to do his job, though. Hold my ass."
Aaliyah. What is it you like to do when you're not working, Aaliyah? It took everything in me not to roll my eyes. Instead, I looked around the 5-star steak and seafood restaurant that Jaleel Peterson brought me to and saw all the other couples enjoying themselves while I experienced boredom. Why must first dates include the same type of questioning? Maybe it wasn't so bad, but when you keep getting taken back to square one of failed relationships, it did get to be nauseating. And that was saying a lot, because I loved questions. I was an investigative reporter, after all. Grabbing the stem of my glass, I lifted it to my lips and took a long sip. Maybe the Riesling would help. I don't have a lot of free time, to be honest. I sat my glass back down and tried to make the best of it as that buzz started to kick in. I work long hours in research and meeting with people, convincing them to open up about details that will assist me with the story I'm working on. Then I have to write my articles. Most of the time, I have just enough energy to hit the gym, which doesn't seem to be working, and then grab a bite to eat before calling it a night. I watched Jaleel lean forward and make an exaggerated show of looking me up and down. His action caught the attention of the young couple that sat at the table less than 10 feet away from us, and the woman gave me one of those "couldn't be me" looks. "You look good to me." He licked his lips and smiled as he sat back. "Oh, no, buddy, you're not getting this pussy tonight." "Thank you, but that has nothing to do with my own health goals. Do you work out?" "Yeah, 3 times a week, and I run 2 days a week. Gotta keep my stamina up, if you know what I mean." "Nothing wrong with that." I ignored his implication. I desperately needed someone to...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?